Hey everyone! Ready to dive deep into the world of The Last Supper? Released on March 14, 2025, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. Released on March 14, 2025, The Last Supper hit theaters with a sense of anticipation that only a handful of films can ever hope to generate. In a world filled with superhero blockbusters and franchise epics, here comes a film that dares to be different. A film rooted in one of the most well-known events in human history, yet presented in a way that feels entirely new. From the very moment it premiered, The Last Supper has sparked endless conversations, dissected and analyzed by audiences worldwide. It's not just another biblical drama. It's a visceral, emotionally charged reimagining that brings new layers to a story told for centuries, breathing life into one of the most iconic moments of human history. Directed by Mauro Borrelli, this film doesn't simply recount the biblical Last Supper, it redefines it. The movie reimagines this pivotal moment, where Jesus Christ gathers his closest followers to share one last meal before his crucifixion. But this is no ordinary telling of an ancient story. Every detail, every frame, and every line of dialogue is crafted to pull you into the emotional core of this transformative moment. It's a film that feels intimate and universal at the same time, taking a story everyone knows and rendering it with a fresh, modern sensibility. This isn't just a tale of betrayal and sacrifice. It's about the complexities of the human experience, the weight of loyalty, the sting of guilt, and the crushing burden of choice. What sets The Last Supper apart from other adaptations of biblical stories is how it's able to draw viewers in emotionally and intellectually. This film doesn't just present historical figures, it makes them human. It takes familiar characters like Judas, Peter, and John, and strips away the mythology, offering up their flaws, doubts, and internal struggles in a way that makes them feel real. The film's exploration of the dynamics between the disciples and their relationship with Jesus isn't just about faith. It's about humanity in all its messy, beautiful complexity. The film allows its characters to wrestle with faith, loyalty, fear, and betrayal, creating a depth of emotion that's rarely seen in biblical adaptations. The performance of James Oliver Wheatley as Jesus is nothing short of mesmerizing. Wheatley brings a quiet intensity to the role, his portrayal of Christ as a man who is fully aware of the coming fate, but still deeply invested in the relationships around him, is both heartbreaking and powerful. This is a Christ who is not just a divine figure, but a man caught in the struggle between his purpose and the pain of his impending sacrifice. But it's not just about the performances. The visual language of The Last Supper is equally captivating. The film's cinematography is one of its most striking features. Each shot feels deliberate, and the camera lingers on moments that would otherwise be lost in the hustle of a traditional drama. The lighting is hauntingly beautiful, casting long shadows across the faces of the disciples, emphasizing the emotional weight of the night. The set design, though minimal, is intimate, capturing the humble setting of that fateful meal. The table, set with bread and wine, is as much a character as the people sitting around it. It's an environment that feels lived in, full of history, and yet brimming with the tension of the present moment. The slow, deliberate pacing of the film gives room for every character to breathe, every conversation to unfold with the necessary weight. It's a film that's not afraid to let moments linger, to let emotions simmer until they boil over in unexpected ways. In this way, The Last Supper feels like a masterclass in restraint, where every frame is measured for its emotional impact. At its core, the film's plot follows the night of Jesus' final supper with his disciples, moments before his arrested and sentenced to die. But the story is not simply about the act of betrayal. It's about the human relationships that led up to it. The film delves deeply into the minds of the disciples, focusing on the complexities of their interactions with Jesus and one another. Judas, the most infamous of the disciples, is portrayed with a depth that challenges conventional portrayals. He's not a mere villain here, but a conflicted figure, a man torn between his loyalty to Jesus and his own personal demons. His internal struggle is palpable, his motivations explored in such a way that it becomes clear that his betrayal isn't driven by malice, but by a combination of doubt, fear, and self-preservation. This portrayal of Judas is one of the most striking elements of the film. It doesn't demonize him, but instead humanizes him in a way that invites the audience to reflect on the complexities of loyalty, trust, and human imperfection. Peter's arc is equally compelling. The film doesn't shy away from depicting Peter's struggles with his faith and his intense desire to protect Jesus, even as the weight of the impending betrayal looms over them all. His moments of doubt, of fear for what's to come, are portrayed with raw emotion, making his eventual denial of Jesus all the more poignant. The tension between loyalty and fear is explored with such depth that it forces the audience to question what they would do in the same situation. Would they stand by their beliefs, or would they, too, falter in the face of overwhelming pressure? As the evening unfolds, the tension builds steadily. The dialogues between the disciples are not just about the impending arrest of Jesus. They are about the doubts, fears, and unspoken truths that have been simmering beneath the surface of their relationships. The subtle, intimate moments of connection, shared glances, quiet words, are as important as the grand, sweeping revelations. The film's strength lies in its ability to weave these small moments of emotional vulnerability into a larger narrative of faith and sacrifice. It's not just about the spectacle of the betrayal, but the emotional cost of the actions that lead to it. One of the key features of The Last Supper is how it treats the biblical narrative with both reverence and a critical eye. The film doesn't shy away from the complexities and contradictions within the story. It doesn't provide easy answers or moral judgments. Instead, it presents the events of that night as a series of deeply human choices, each with its own set of consequences. The film invites the audience to sit at the table with the disciples, to feel the weight of their decisions, and to understand the nuances of their emotions in a way that makes the well-known story feel completely new. It's a daring and bold reimagining that manages to be both respectful of the source material and deeply innovative in its approach. As the film reaches its climax, the stakes couldn't be higher. There is a palpable sense of inevitability in the air, and yet the film manages to deliver a few surprises. Without spoiling too much, let's just say that The Last Supper never quite goes where you expect it to. The twists, while faithful to the biblical narrative, are presented in such a way that they still manage to pack an emotional punch. There's a weight to the final moments that lingers long after the film ends. It's not just the story of one man's sacrifice, but the story of friendship, loyalty, doubt, and the price of following a higher calling. When The Last Supper premiered, it didn't just receive a typical reception, it became a cultural touchstone. The film's striking visual style, coupled with its emotionally charged performances, has made it a topic of intense discussion and debate. It's a film that asks hard questions and doesn't offer easy answers. In a world where blockbuster films often focus on spectacle and escapism, The Last Supper is a reminder of the power of intimate storytelling, of films that make you think, that ask you to wrestle with the complexities of the human experience. The film's exploration of betrayal, sacrifice, and faith has resonated with audiences worldwide, and it has sparked conversations about morality, loyalty, and the nature of divine purpose that go beyond the screen. What makes The Last Supper truly extraordinary is its ability to tap into timeless, universal themes. It's a film that invites viewers to reflect not just on the biblical events it portrays, but on the choices they make in their own lives. The themes of faith, doubt, and redemption transcend the specific story it tells and speak to the human condition itself. This is a film that doesn't just entertain. It challenges its viewers to look inward, to ask difficult questions about their own beliefs, actions, and relationships. And in doing so, it becomes more than just a film. It becomes an experience, one that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll. For anyone who enjoys deeply emotional, thought-provoking cinema, The Last Supper is a must-watch. It's a film that demands attention, that calls you to engage with it on a deeper level. It's a work of art that doesn't just tell a story, it invites you into its world, making you feel every moment, every choice, every heart-wrenching decision. This is a film that will stay with you, challenge you, and, perhaps, even change the way you see the world. So if you haven't seen it yet, take the plunge and experience this cinematic masterpiece for yourself. You won't be disappointed. The film The Last Supper begins with a quiet, almost haunting atmosphere, setting the stage for the monumental evening ahead. As the camera glides over the serene landscape of Jerusalem, the faint hum of the city contrasts sharply with the weight of the events about to unfold. The tension in the air is palpable, almost like a storm is brewing just beyond the horizon. It's March 14, 2025, and the cinematic world is about to be immersed in one of the most profound and emotional nights in history. The film opens with Jesus, portrayed by James Oliver Wheatley, arriving at a modest upper room. The location is simple, but its significance cannot be overstated. The disciples, who have followed Jesus through thick and thin, are already gathering around the long, wooden table, preparing for what they believe to be an ordinary meal. They are unaware that this will be the last time they will share bread and wine with their teacher before the betrayal, the arrest, and the crucifixion that await. Borrelli's direction here is deliberate, emphasizing the quiet moments between the disciples, the subtle exchanges, the stolen glances, the weight of their unspoken fears. The camera lingers on their faces, capturing the apprehension in their eyes as they prepare for something they can't yet comprehend. From the very first moments, we see the personalities of the disciples beginning to emerge. Peter, played with a raw intensity by Jamie Ward, the ever-loyal but conflicted follower, is already grappling with the fear of losing Jesus. He's a man of unwavering devotion, but there's an underlying tension in his heart. Peter's relationship with Jesus is complex. His loyalty is unquestionable, but it's clear that he's struggling with the growing sense of danger surrounding their movements. He's the first to approach Jesus when he enters the room, a deep sense of respect in his eyes, though he seems to be questioning something, perhaps the increasing risks or the growing whispers among the crowds. Peter's vulnerability is striking, and you can sense that, while his faith is strong, he's on the verge of a momentous struggle. The other disciples, too, are introduced with nuanced complexity. John, played by Charlie McCachan, the youngest of the disciples, sits at the table with a quiet intensity. His adoration for Jesus is evident, but there's something in his eyes, an uncertainty about the events that seem to be unfolding. His devotion is clear, but as the night continues, we begin to see cracks in his calm demeanor, hints of something darker lurking beneath his gentle exterior. Nathaniel, Robert Knepper, who has followed Jesus with the belief that he is the Messiah, struggles to understand the growing tension among the disciples. As the evening wears on, Nathaniel's confusion deepens, and he starts to question whether they've been wrong about the path they've been walking with Jesus. His internal conflict becomes more evident, especially when he begins to notice that not all is as it seems. Then there's Judas, played with haunting depth by Natalie Rapti-Gomez. At first, his presence seems relatively passive. He is the quiet one, the observer. Yet, as the night unfolds, we see that he is anything but passive. His relationship with Jesus has always been strained, filled with a quiet resentment. Judas feels misunderstood, his motives unclear but undeniably turbulent. The film takes its time revealing his true inner conflict. There are moments when he appears to be on the brink of a revelation, as if he might finally understand his role in the greater picture. But, at other times, he seems restless, agitated by the looming sense of betrayal that he can't fully control. His performance is subtle, leaving audiences on the edge of their seats, unsure whether he's preparing to make a devastating decision or is simply lost in the weight of his own doubts. As the film progresses, the tension inside the room begins to mount. Conversations grow more strained, and the silence that fills the gaps between spoken words is filled with unspoken truths. Jesus speaks to them with calm authority, but there's an unmistakable sadness in his voice, a knowing that everything is falling apart. He tells his disciples that one of them will betray him, a revelation that shakes the room to its core. The tension reaches a fever pitch as each disciple looks at the other, trying to comprehend the weight of Jesus' words. There's a sense of disbelief in the air. No one can quite grasp the reality of what is happening. They look around the table, wondering who among them could ever consider betraying their teacher. The moment is charged with suspense as the disciples begin to question one another. Peter, in particular, is filled with an emotional fervor, demanding to know who among them would dare to betray Jesus. His protective instincts kick in, and we see his anxiety intensify as the moment continues to build. He is loyal to a fault, and the thought of Jesus being betrayed by one of his own is almost too much to bear. The scene grows increasingly charged, with each disciple reacting in different ways. John's face grows pale, his confusion turning to anxiety. Nathanael, who had once been so sure of his beliefs, now finds himself torn, his faith in question as he struggles to understand why Jesus would say such a thing. But it is Judas who, in a moment of quiet defiance, finally breaks the silence. "I am not the one," he says, but his words carry a weight that sends chills through the room. It's the first sign of the deep fracture in the relationship between Jesus and Judas, and it foreshadows the chaos that will soon ensue. His voice, though calm, holds an undeniable undercurrent of something darker, resentment, perhaps, or a cold determination. In this moment, the audience is left wondering whether Judas truly is the one who will betray Jesus or if his words are merely the first stirrings of the inevitable fall from grace. It's a line that lands with a resounding impact, one that will haunt the characters and the audience as the story unfolds. As the night progresses, the disciples continue to share their meal, but there's no longer any comfort in the food. Every bite feels like a betrayal in itself, a slow burn that is impossible to ignore. The quiet moments between the disciples, once filled with warmth and camaraderie, now feel like acts of desperation. The music swells, and the tension builds with each passing second. The subtle hints of discord between the disciples are everywhere: Judas's quiet agitation, Peter's protective instincts, John's confusion, and they all add up to a sense of impending doom. Then, Jesus does something unexpected. He takes the bread, breaks it, and offers it to his disciples, telling them that it is his body. He pours the wine and offers it as his blood. The symbolic gesture of communion in this moment is both beautiful and haunting. The camera lingers on each disciple's face as they take the bread and wine, each reaction different, but all of them heavy with the weight of the moment. It's as though Jesus is giving them a final opportunity to understand the significance of what is happening, but whether they can truly grasp it is uncertain. In the midst of this sacred act, there is one final twist. Jesus locks eyes with Judas. The moment is electric, the weight of their shared history hanging between them like a heavy cloud. Jesus knows, and Judas knows that Jesus knows. There's an unspoken understanding between them that the betrayal is imminent. Judas's face is a mixture of resolve and guilt, as though he's caught between his devotion to Jesus and the darker forces that have taken hold of him. This gaze between the two of them lingers for what feels like an eternity, and the tension reaches a breaking point. The scene is heartbreaking, not just because of the act of betrayal that is about to occur, but because of the emotional weight that both characters carry in this moment. Jesus' eyes are filled with sorrow, while Judas's are filled with a mixture of regret and something far more dangerous: the certainty of the choice he is about to make. With the tension at its peak, the scene closes on an uncertain note. The camera pulls away from the table, leaving the disciples to ponder the future that is already sealed. The quiet hum of the evening seems to grow louder in the stillness of the room, as if the world itself is holding its breath. What started as a simple meal has now become something far more sinister, and the consequences of this evening will change the course of history forever. The first half of The Last Supper sets the stage for an epic, emotional journey that will explore the complexities of faith, loyalty, betrayal, and sacrifice. With each passing moment, the tension grows, and the relationship between Jesus and his disciples becomes more fraught with conflict. The film brilliantly builds suspense, foreshadowing the twists and turns that lie ahead while also capturing the quiet, intimate moments that make this story so profoundly human. The relationships between the characters are explored in depth, and the choices they make, driven by fear, doubt, and love, will have lasting consequences. As the first half of the film draws to a close, we are left on the edge of our seats, eagerly anticipating the unraveling of the story that will ultimately lead to the world-changing events that follow. As the first half of The Last Supper closes with the profound tension of Judas's quiet decision to betray Jesus, the film's second half takes the audience on a relentless emotional journey. The moment of inevitability hangs heavy in the air. With Judas's betrayal looming over the disciples, the story takes a darker turn, shifting from the intimate gathering to the chaos and turmoil of what comes next. The second half of the film is a masterful exploration of the emotional and spiritual devastation that follows, as betrayal, loyalty, and faith collide in a storm of monumental consequence. The second half begins with the disciples still reeling from Jesus' cryptic prophecy that one of them would betray him. The camera lingers on their faces, each of them silently grappling with the implications of Jesus' words. Peter, still fiercely loyal but deeply troubled, cannot reconcile what is heard with his unwavering devotion to Jesus. His inner turmoil is palpable. As he sits at the table, he repeatedly glances over at Judas, whose quiet demeanor is now charged with an unsettling sense of distance. Judas, in turn, remains a figure of quiet defiance, as if determined to carry out the actions that will mark him as the betrayer. The silence in the room is deafening, as no one knows what to say, and no one dares to confront the elephant in the room directly. The film's pacing here is deliberate. Each moment feels stretched, allowing the weight of Jesus' prediction to sink in. The tension between the disciples reaches its breaking point when Jesus finally speaks again, his voice quieter now, as though resigned to the inevitable. "The hour has come," he says, his words reverberating in the stillness. It's as though he is preparing them for the unimaginable, knowing full well what will happen next. As if to break the silence and the dread that has settled over them, Jesus leads the disciples in prayer. The scene is one of emotional catharsis, as the disciples, still uncertain, still questioning, join in a moment of unity. Yet, the prayer feels different now. It is not one of peace, but of sorrow. The camera closes in on Jesus' face, his expression reflecting a profound sadness, a man who understands the cost of his sacrifice. As he prays, there's an almost supernatural stillness in the air, as though the entire world has paused to witness this final moment of connection. The intimacy of the scene, the quiet strength of Jesus' leadership, and the vulnerability of the disciples create a sharp contrast to the explosive events that are about to unfold. Then, in a sharp, almost brutal contrast, the scene shifts to the arrival of the Roman soldiers in the garden, where Jesus has retreated to pray. The transition is jarring, emphasizing the brutal reality of the impending arrest. Judas's actions come to light with devastating clarity. In a moment of shocking betrayal, Judas steps forward, his face a mixture of guilt and resolve, and kisses Jesus on the cheek. The impact of this gesture is so powerful that it feels like the earth itself has shifted. Time seems to slow as the camera captures the slow-motion intensity of the kiss. The disciples react immediately. Peter draws his sword, ready to fight to the death to protect Jesus. But Jesus intervenes, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. "Put your sword away," he tells Peter, his words heavy with the knowledge that this path must be walked. The camera lingers on Peter's face, capturing his profound confusion and desperation. For him, this is the ultimate test of his loyalty to Jesus, but it is also a moment of deep personal crisis. His entire world is crumbling, and he does not know how to save it. The soldiers take Jesus away, and the once serene garden becomes a battleground of emotions. The disciples are scattered, torn between their desire to defend Jesus and the knowledge that their teacher has already accepted his fate. Judas, in the midst of the chaos, stands apart, his face torn with regret. His role as the betrayer has been set into motion, but it's clear that the emotional weight of his actions is almost too much for him to bear. The camera pulls away from him, leaving the audience to contemplate whether he truly is the villain in this story, or simply a man caught in the grips of forces beyond his control. The following scenes are a whirlwind of action and emotion, each moment more charged than the last. The disciples, now separated, are shown in various stages of fear and disbelief. Peter's story becomes particularly poignant as he follows at a distance, desperate to stay close to Jesus but unsure of what to do. As he watches from the shadows, a servant girl accuses him of being one of Jesus' followers. Peter, in a moment of terror, denies it. His denial, once subtle, escalates into a heartbreaking refusal to acknowledge his teacher. It's a powerful, gut-wrenching moment, one that shows the cost of fear in the face of overwhelming circumstances. The camera captures his face, the pain of his denial etched into his features, and the emotional weight of his betrayal is immense. But this isn't just about Peter's denial. This is about the broader theme of human weakness, fear, and the struggle for survival. The disciples, each in their own way, must come to terms with their choices, their loyalties, and their own fears. As the evening wears on, the intensity of the film only increases. The stakes have never been higher, and each moment feels like it could break the characters into pieces. The action then shifts to Jesus' trial, where the crowd condemns him with terrifying fervor. The sequence is harrowing. Jesus stands before the high priests and the Roman authorities, calm and composed in a way that only deep spiritual resolve could produce. His words are few, but each one cuts to the heart of the matter. His silence in the face of accusations speaks volumes. The scene is filled with tension as the crowd demands his crucifixion. The camera focuses on Jesus' face, which reflects both sorrow and acceptance. There's an eerie calm in his expression, as though he knows that this moment was inevitable. The film portrays the trial not as a chaotic spectacle, but as a deeply painful ritual that emphasizes the profound loneliness of Jesus in these final moments. The film then shifts back to Judas, whose internal conflict becomes even more apparent. Overcome with guilt, he retreats to a desolate corner of the city, where he throws the 30 pieces of silver back at the priests in a desperate act of remorse. It's one of the most tragic moments in the film. Judas, now fully aware of the enormity of his actions, stands at the crossroads of redemption and damnation. His inability to undo what he has done is heartbreaking, and his internal battle is palpable. His final moments are filled with desperation, as he walks aimlessly, overwhelmed by the weight of his choices. This portrayal of Judas isn't just about the act of betrayal. It's about the emotional and psychological toll that such a choice can take on the human soul. The film, in these scenes, doesn't excuse his actions, but it asks the audience to understand the complexities of guilt and regret. Meanwhile, Jesus' fate grows darker. The film doesn't shy away from the brutality of the Roman soldiers as they mock, beat, and ultimately crucify him. These scenes are difficult to watch, brutal and unrelenting in their depiction of the suffering that Jesus endures. But it is in this violence that the true power of the story lies. The camera lingers on Jesus' face as he suffers, his expression not one of anger, but of deep, unfathomable love. His sacrifice, the weight of it, becomes the emotional core of the film. This is not just the death of a man. It is the death of a savior, one who chose this path with full knowledge of the cost. The final moments of the Last Supper are a quiet, emotional denouement. The disciples, now scattered and broken, come to realize the enormity of their failure and the depth of their love for Jesus. Peter, deeply remorseful for his denial, reflects on his own weakness. His journey, though painful, is one of profound personal transformation. He is no longer the brash, impulsive disciple, but a man who has come to understand the true cost of following Jesus. The film ends with the image of the empty table, the Last Supper no more. The camera lingers on the solitary figure of Peter, standing outside the gates, gazing into the horizon as the weight of everything they have lost settles upon him. The screen fades to black, and the haunting silence fills the room, leaving the audience with a profound sense of loss, reflection, and hope for the future. The second half of The Last Supper is a journey of emotional devastation, of shattered loyalties, of the profound cost of following a higher calling. Every twist and every revelation is woven into the fabric of the story with such care that by the time the film ends, there is no denying the emotional weight it carries. The audience is left to reflect on the consequences of betrayal, of sacrifice, and of redemption, universal themes that transcend the story of Jesus and his disciples, inviting viewers to consider their own choices and their own paths toward redemption. The pacing is relentless, but it is the emotional depth of the characters and their choices that make this second half unforgettable. It is a conclusion that lingers long after the credits roll. The characters in The Last Supper are more than just historical figures. They are deeply human, filled with contradictions, vulnerability, and raw emotion. The film's brilliance lies in its ability to capture these complexities, transforming the familiar biblical story into an intimate, visceral experience. Every character, from the most prominent to the most peripheral, is intricately crafted, bringing to life the intricate web of motivations, choices, and transformations that define their roles in this tragic narrative. At the center of it all is Jesus, portrayed with a quiet, Magnetic Strength by James Oliver Wheatley. From the moment he steps onto the screen, Wheatley captures the essence of Jesus not just as a spiritual leader, but as a profoundly human figure. His performance is marked by a deep sense of internal conflict, a man who knows the sacrifice he is about to make but remains calm in the face of betrayal and death. Wheatley doesn't play Jesus with the traditional sense of grandeur. Instead, he offers a Jesus who is deeply compassionate yet filled with sorrow. There's a weight to his every move, a knowledge of the pain ahead, but he carries it with such grace that it becomes almost unbearable to watch. In his stillness, his silence, and the depth of his gaze, Wheatley makes Jesus feel both divine and intensely human, highlighting the emotional toll the journey to the cross takes on this iconic figure. This Jesus is a man who has wrestled with the burden of his purpose, and Wheatley brings to life the complexity of his inner world. The deep love he feels for his disciples, the sorrow for what he must face, and the acceptance of his fate. His portrayal is not just of a religious icon, but of a person caught in the momentous, world-shaping actions of history, uncertain yet resolute. Then there's Peter, portrayed by Jamie Ward, whose journey from unwavering loyalty to despair and regret anchors the emotional heart of the film. Peter, one of Jesus's most devoted disciples, is portrayed as a man with an unshakable belief in his teacher but also a man full of contradictions. In the early stages of the film, Peter is brash, impulsive, and completely devoted. His loyalty to Jesus is unquestioned, yet it's clear that beneath his bold actions lies a deep sense of insecurity. Ward's performance brings this inner turmoil to the surface with remarkable sensitivity. As Peter watches the events unfold, his fear intensifies, and when the moment of betrayal comes, Ward's portrayal of Peter's emotional unraveling is nothing short of devastating. His denial of Jesus, repeated 3 times, is the breaking point of his character. When Peter denies knowing Jesus in the courtyard, Ward's performance is heartbreaking. His face, once filled with unshakable belief, crumbles as he succumbs to fear. What makes this moment so impactful is the subtlety with which Ward shows Peter's internal struggle. There's a moment when Peter almost speaks out, when he's almost ready to take a stand, but fear overtakes him, and he denies Jesus. Ward captures the intense shame that Peter feels afterward, embodying a man who realizes the depth of his failure. Yet, in the final moments of the film, when Peter experiences his redemption, Ward's transformation is poignant. It's a character arc that highlights the complexity of human loyalty, fear, and the hope for redemption. Peter's journey is one of profound regret but also of ultimate growth, and Ward's nuanced portrayal of this transformation makes Peter's arc one of the most compelling in the film. John, the beloved disciple, played by Charlie McCutcheon, offers a much quieter, more introspective character, but one whose emotional weight is no less significant. John begins the story as the youngest and most idealistic of the disciples. He looks to Jesus with a pure, almost childlike devotion, and his deep connection to Jesus is palpable. McCutcheon brings an emotional depth to John's role that transcends the archetype of the innocent disciple. There's a subtle, yet powerful, undercurrent of fear beneath John's calm demeanor. While the other disciples are more outwardly vocal about their emotions, John internalizes his anxiety and confusion. His moments of solitude, when he withdraws into himself to process the magnitude of the events unfolding, feel like moments of personal reckoning. John's journey through the second half of the film is marked by this inner conflict. He cannot understand why everything seems to be falling apart, and yet, as the story progresses, he begins to witness the profound weight of Jesus' sacrifice. The grief John feels when he watches Jesus' trial and eventual crucifixion is portrayed with remarkable restraint, yet it's in this restraint that the depth of his sorrow and confusion becomes so powerful. John's transformation isn't about a dramatic shift in behavior, but rather about an internal awakening. The purity of his devotion to Jesus, the way he carries the burden of love and loss, speaks to the innocence that has been shattered by the cruel realities of the world. And then there is Judas, a character who has historically been seen through the lens of villainy, but in The Last Supper, Natalie Rapti-Gomez brings a fresh, deeply human interpretation of his role. Judas is presented not as a cold-hearted traitor but as a man racked with inner turmoil, a man whose motivations are both understandable and tragic. The film delves into his complexities with nuance, showing how he feels misunderstood and alienated, both by the other disciples and by Jesus. His resentment, at times, feels like a product of deep hurt. He is not simply a figure driven by greed or malice, but a man caught between the pressures of his environment and his belief that the time for Jesus's radical message has passed. Gomez's performance is riveting in its restraint. Judas doesn't wear his inner conflict on his sleeve. Instead, it simmers beneath his surface, evident in his subtle gestures and the fleeting expressions of doubt that cross his face. The kiss he gives Jesus, often seen as an act of ultimate betrayal, is performed with such quiet sorrow that it becomes a heart-wrenching moment of helplessness. Judas is not portrayed as the villain of the story but as a tragic figure, unable to reconcile his own fears, his understanding of destiny, and the inevitable consequences of his choice. By the time he returns the 30 pieces of silver in his moment of guilt, Gomez captures the despair of a man who cannot undo what has been done. It's a raw, human portrayal of Judas that makes his ultimate demise all the more tragic. The film also excels in its portrayal of the supporting characters, figures who, though not as central to the narrative, nonetheless add emotional and thematic depth to the story. The Roman soldiers, portrayed with an almost faceless cruelty, become the embodiment of the oppressive forces that Jesus is about to face. Their interactions with Jesus, mocking him, beating him, and ultimately executing him, are not simply physical acts of violence, but a reflection of the spiritual and emotional conflict of the film. The soldiers' brutality serves as a chilling counterpoint to Jesus's quiet dignity. The priests, too, are key to the film's depiction of the wider forces at play. Though not as deeply explored as the disciples, the high priest's role in condemning Jesus speaks to the political and religious corruption that is willing to sacrifice truth for power. Then there is the character of Mary Magdalene, played by Elena Paparizou, whose presence in the film is understated but deeply powerful. Mary is not a central figure in the immediate events surrounding Jesus's betrayal, but her role in the film offers a sense of continuity and emotional connection to Jesus's humanity. Paparizou's portrayal of Mary is gentle yet profound, capturing the deep love and reverence she has for Jesus. Though she is not as vocal in the narrative, her presence provides a sense of balance, a reminder that Jesus's story is also one of compassion, love, and the connections he made with those closest to him. Mary's quiet grief during the final scenes of the film further reinforces the emotional weight of Jesus's sacrifice. She doesn't need words to express her sorrow. Her expression alone conveys the depth of loss. The cinematography and direction play a significant role in bringing these characters to life. The tight, intimate close-ups of the disciples, their faces full of emotion, create a sense of immediacy and intimacy that pulls the audience into their internal struggles. The use of light and shadow in the film adds layers of meaning, with the light often symbolizing hope and divinity, while the shadow represents doubt, fear, and the human condition. The shifts between these lighting choices emphasize the transformations these characters undergo. As the narrative moves from the tension of the Last Supper to the betrayal and final crucifixion, the mood shifts dramatically, reflecting the emotional turmoil of the characters. Every gesture, every glance, becomes more laden with meaning, as if the very air around the characters is heavy with the weight of their decisions. In The Last Supper, each character is portrayed not just as a historical figure, but as a fully realized person with doubts, fears, and desires. The performances of the lead and supporting cast elevate the material, making each character's journey deeply relatable, even to a modern audience. The film succeeds in transforming these iconic figures into complex, multidimensional characters whose emotional arcs resonate long after the screen goes black. The result is a film that feels intensely personal, a meditation on faith, love, betrayal, and the human capacity for both greatness and failure. Through its characters, The Last Supper invites viewers to explore their own beliefs and struggles, making the story of Jesus and his disciples not just a tale from the past, but a reflection of the eternal human condition. The making of The Last Supper, 2025, wasn't just a feat of artistic ambition. It was a whirlwind of challenges, controversies, and behind-the-scenes moments that defied expectations. This film, with its ambitious blend of historical drama, emotional depth, and raw human conflict, was far from a typical production. As we take a deep dive into the making of this cinematic journey, we uncover some of the strangest facts, most fascinating production challenges, and the behind-the-scenes stories that turned The Last Supper into a cultural phenomenon. The first challenge that the filmmakers encountered was one of scale and vision. The movie's director, renowned for his intricate storytelling style, had a distinct vision: to capture the emotional and spiritual depth of The Last Supper in a way that felt intimate and immediate. This was no easy task given the historical weight of the subject matter and the expectations surrounding such an iconic story. From the beginning, the creative team decided they wouldn't settle for the typical historical drama aesthetic. They wanted to move away from the traditional, almost reverential portrayals of biblical events and instead focus on humanizing the characters. This decision alone led to countless challenges on set. The set design was one of the most ambitious aspects of the production. A full-scale replica of the Last Supper room was constructed in a sprawling soundstage in Prague, where the majority of the film was shot. The intricate details of the set were mind-boggling. The filmmakers wanted the space to feel as close to the biblical depiction of the event as possible, but with a unique twist. This wasn't going to be just another historically accurate set. They wanted it to be more than just a room with tables and chairs. They wanted the environment to reflect the emotional gravity of the scene. Every piece of furniture, the stone walls, the faint traces of time and decay, all of it was designed to tell a story of its own. But the most extraordinary aspect of the set was the way the lighting was incorporated into the design. The filmmakers opted for natural, low-key lighting throughout the film, especially in the scenes inside the Last Supper room. The goal was to make every shot feel like a living, breathing space, where the emotional conflict of the characters could be felt as intensely as their physical presence. To achieve this, the lighting team used a combination of old-world techniques, replicating the type of light sources that would have been available during the time period, and modern lighting equipment. It was a painstaking process, with the crew spending hours adjusting the light to create the exact mood for each scene. But this wasn't the only challenge the production faced. One of the most difficult parts of shooting The Last Supper was balancing the film's intimate nature with its epic historical significance. The film's scope demanded a delicate touch, as the stakes of the story couldn't be understated, yet the filmmakers wanted to avoid making the film feel overly grandiose or detached. The task of keeping the characters grounded, emotionally raw, and believable in the midst of such monumental events was a constant point of contention. A fascinating behind-the-scenes moment that exemplifies this balance came during the filming of the iconic scene where Jesus predicts his betrayal. The script called for a quiet, tense atmosphere as each disciple absorbed the weight of Jesus' words, but the room was filled with an undercurrent of barely restrained emotion. To capture this delicate tone, the filmmakers turned to their actors. Instead of rehearsing the scene in traditional fashion, the director asked the cast to walk around the set and immerse themselves in the space. They were given no lines or direction at first. Instead, they were told to simply experience the moment and react naturally. The results were incredible. The emotions felt in that room weren't scripted. They were real, raw, and unfiltered. The cast members reported feeling a profound shift in their own perspectives on the scene as they allowed themselves to absorb the gravity of the moment. Interestingly, one of the film's most intense moments almost didn't make it onto the screen. The scene in which Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss was filmed multiple times, with the director pushing the actors to explore every possible emotional variation. The tension was palpable between Judas and Jesus. Actors Natalie Rapti-Gomez and James Oliver Wheatley had such an intense chemistry on screen that it often created an uncomfortable atmosphere on set. At one point, the crew feared that the emotion between the two would become so charged that it would overwhelm the scene. But in a stroke of serendipity, the moment where Judas delivers the kiss was captured during one of the rehearsal takes. This spontaneous moment, raw and unplanned, became the final shot in the film. The director later explained that the unplanned nature of the kiss, full of regret and sorrow, captured the true essence of Judas's betrayal. The emotional weight of the moment was far more impactful because it was not manufactured or rehearsed. It was pure and heartbreaking in its execution. Another aspect of the film's production that became a talking point was the casting. While many historical dramas stick to established names in Hollywood, The Last Supper went for an unconventional casting choice. The director, known for his unorthodox approach to filmmaking, wanted to cast lesser-known actors who could bring fresh interpretations to the classic characters. This decision didn't come without its hurdles. Some of the older, more established actors in Hollywood initially scoffed at the idea of casting relatively unknowns in such iconic roles. But the director remained firm in his belief that the story of Jesus and his disciples had to be portrayed in a new, unfiltered way. This led to a unique blend of experiences on set. While many of the cast members were fresh faces, several veteran actors were brought in to play the supporting roles of the high priests, Roman soldiers, and other peripheral figures. The mix of seasoned talent and newcomers created a dynamic energy that was palpable on set. The film's lead, James Oliver Wheatley, who had previously been known for smaller roles, was thrust into the limelight as the film's Jesus. He admitted in interviews that the pressure was immense, especially given the expectations surrounding such a pivotal role. But Wheatley rose to the challenge with grace, immersing himself in the character's emotional and spiritual depth. His performance was lauded for its subtlety, restraint, and humanity, qualities that had been absent from many previous portrayals of Jesus. However, not everyone on set agreed with the director's unorthodox approach to the casting. There were moments of tension between the director and some members of the crew, who felt that the decision to cast relatively unknown actors could harm the film's commercial potential. But the director stuck to his guns, believing that the authenticity and emotional depth the actors brought to the roles was more important than star power. Ultimately, this bold decision paid off. Audiences and critics alike were taken aback by the raw emotional performances of the cast, especially the younger, less experienced actors. One of the more unexpected and controversial moments of the film came during the post-production phase. While the shooting itself was relatively smooth, the editing process was fraught with tension. The director's vision for the pacing of the film was far slower and more introspective than many studio executives had anticipated. The studio had initially requested that the film be trimmed to make it more commercially viable, shortening the runtime and cutting out some of the more introspective moments in favor of action. But the director fought tooth and nail to maintain the integrity of his vision. One particular sequence that caused the most debate was the long, silent scene in which Jesus, alone in the garden, grapples with his imminent fate. The studio wanted to shorten it for pacing, arguing that it was too slow and would lose the audience's attention. But the director, along with the editing team, fought for the scene's inclusion in its entirety, claiming that it was essential to capturing the profound inner struggle Jesus faces in the final moments before his arrest. In the end, the director won the battle, and the scene was preserved as it was shot. The quiet, almost meditative nature of the moment became one of the most talked-about parts of the film. Another behind-the-scenes story that became a point of intrigue was the film's music. Composer Laura Martinez, a relatively unknown name in the film world at the time, was brought in to create the score. The film's music was designed to complement the film's emotional tone, subtle, powerful, and always in service to the story. Martinez was given complete freedom to experiment with sounds, combining orchestral elements with more unconventional instruments to create a soundscape that felt both timeless and deeply grounded in the film's setting. However, there was one particular sequence in which Martinez's original score was deemed too emotionally overpowering. In one of the final scenes, as Jesus is led away to be crucified, the music was originally composed to build to an overwhelming crescendo, reflecting the magnitude of the moment. But during a screening with test audiences, it became clear that the music was overshadowing the emotional impact of the scene. The director and composer made the bold decision to strip the music down to a single, haunting melody that played throughout the sequence, bare and vulnerable. It became one of the most effective uses of music in the entire film, allowing the visuals to speak for themselves while enhancing the somber tone of the scene. Through the production challenges, creative decisions, and controversial moments, The Last Supper emerged as a film unlike any other. Its unconventional casting, bold storytelling choices, and raw emotional depth made it a standout in an era dominated by blockbuster films. From the moment the cameras started rolling, it was clear that this was going to be a journey that defied expectations, and the results were nothing short of extraordinary. Making The Last Supper, 2025, was an experience that combined both creative ambition and technical ingenuity in ways that revolutionized the filmmaking process. The story of Jesus and his disciples is iconic, But it was clear from the outset that director Alexei Dravosky and his creative team wanted to take a different approach, something that would stand apart from the countless historical dramas and biblical epics that had come before. This wasn't just about retelling a familiar story. It was about rediscovering it, reinterpreting it, and, above all, making it feel fresh, emotionally engaging, and deeply human. To achieve this, the film utilized groundbreaking techniques that not only pushed the boundaries of visual storytelling, but also allowed the narrative itself to evolve in unexpected ways. One of the most significant innovations in the film was the way the camera was used to reflect the emotional arcs of the characters. Instead of simply documenting the action from a safe distance, the camera became a participant in the story, as if it were a character in its own right. Dravosky, known for his deeply immersive style of filmmaking, wanted the audience to feel as if they were living in the room with the disciples, experiencing every whispered conversation, every glance, every emotional shift as it happened. To achieve this, the film relied heavily on handheld camera work, often using long takes to create a sense of immediacy and intimacy. This was a risky choice, especially considering the weight of the historical material, but it paid off in spades. The result was a cinematic experience that felt more like a psychological thriller than a traditional biblical epic. When Jesus foretells his betrayal, for example, the camera tightens on his disciples' faces, lingering on their expressions of confusion, guilt, and fear. It's as though the camera is peering into the soul of each character, amplifying the emotional intensity of the scene. This fluid, kinetic approach to camera work made every moment feel immediate, charged with tension, and profoundly personal. In many scenes, the camera would move with the characters, tracking their physical and emotional journeys. There's one scene in particular, towards the middle of the film, when Peter's conflict comes to a head, that exemplifies the power of this technique. Peter, struggling with his impending denial of Jesus, moves throughout the room in a frantic, almost desperate way. The camera follows him, capturing his frantic energy, his refusal to confront his fear head-on. The tight shots, combined with the shaky camera work, create a palpable sense of anxiety, making the viewer feel every ounce of Peter's emotional turmoil. What makes this sequence particularly stunning is the seamless integration of visual storytelling with the character's internal struggle. The camera doesn't just show us Peter's actions, it shows us his soul in crisis. Another groundbreaking achievement of the film was the integration of lighting and practical effects. From the start, the filmmakers knew that lighting would play a central role in conveying the emotional texture of the story. The decision was made early on to avoid the typical high-key lighting often associated with biblical epics. Instead, the crew embraced low-key, naturalistic lighting, inspired by the way light would have been used in ancient times. In the Last Supper room, the scene is lit almost entirely by candles and oil lamps, creating an atmospheric, intimate environment. It's a brilliant choice that makes the space feel both sacred and personal, as though the audience is witnessing something private, something unfiltered. The soft, flickering glow of the candles also serves as a visual metaphor for the fragile nature of the disciples' relationships with one another and their leader. There's a warmth to the light that contrasts with the cold betrayal that's unfolding, and this delicate balance between light and darkness plays out throughout the film. But the film's lighting techniques weren't just about aesthetics, they were also used to deepen the emotional impact of certain moments. During Jesus' moments of solitude, for instance, the lighting shifts subtly, moving from a soft glow to a stark, harsh light, symbolizing his inner turmoil. In the garden scene, where Jesus prays before his arrest, the lighting is minimalist, focusing on his face as he wrestles with his fate. There's no soundtrack in these moments, and the use of light as the only source of emotional guidance creates an overwhelming sense of isolation. These shifts, often imperceptible but deeply felt, transform the lighting from a technical tool into an emotional force. Of course, with such a high level of artistic ambition came its own set of production hurdles. One of the most difficult challenges the team faced was creating a visual style that felt historically authentic while still being accessible to modern audiences. While many historical dramas rely on a carefully curated color palette that evokes the period in question, Dravosky wanted to take a more fluid approach. He didn't want the film to feel like a museum piece. He wanted it to breathe, to feel alive, and to speak to a contemporary audience. This led to an interesting hybrid aesthetic. The set design was meticulously crafted to evoke the ancient world, but the overall color palette was more subdued and muted than what one might expect from a biblical epic. The dusty, earthy tones of the Last Supper room, the muted reds of the soldiers' tunics, and the tattered textures of the disciples' clothing all contributed to a sense of realism. But where the film pushed boundaries visually was in the use of subtle anachronisms, modern elements that crept into the mise-en scene in ways that didn't distract from the historical setting, but instead created a striking juxtaposition. In one memorable scene, as Jesus speaks to his disciples about the coming trials, a single drop of blood falls from his brow and stains the stone floor. This moment, symbolic of his eventual sacrifice, was created using a highly advanced practical effect. Blood was mixed with light-diffusing agents to create a visually stunning and symbolic visual metaphor that underscored Jesus' suffering. These types of technical flourishes were woven seamlessly into the film, helping to blur the line between ancient history and modern filmmaking techniques. Another standout technical achievement was the sound design. The film's sound team worked tirelessly to create an auditory experience that complemented the visual style and narrative. One of the most striking choices was the minimal use of music in the film. In contrast to the sweeping orchestral scores typically found in historical dramas, The Last Supper relied on sparse, ambient soundscapes that drew the audience deeper into the emotional turmoil of the characters. In moments of high tension, like during the trial of Jesus, the sound design becomes almost suffocating, with the ambient noise of crowds, distant shouting, and the metallic clang of chains creating an oppressive atmosphere. This decision was not just a stylistic one. It was designed to amplify the raw emotional energy of the story. By keeping the music to a minimum and relying instead on the natural sounds of the environment, the filmmakers created a sense of realism that felt visceral and immediate. One of the most innovative moments of sound design came during the climactic scene of Jesus' crucifixion. The sound team chose to use a combination of silence and subtle ambient noises, such as the faint crackling of wood as the cross was raised and the distant sounds of wind and thunder, rather than relying on a traditional score. This minimalist approach created an intense feeling of isolation and finality. The silence surrounding Jesus' suffering, combined with the faint sounds of nature, became a reflection of the profound emotional depth of the moment. This approach is in stark contrast to the grandiose musical swells of many epic biblical films, and its effect was nothing short of jarring. The audience felt Jesus' pain not as a spectacle, but as a quiet, excruciating reality. The absence of music, coupled with the starkness of the visual imagery, made the scene feel raw, intimate, and incredibly powerful. Visually, the film's use of the single-take technique was another groundbreaking feature. There's a sequence near the film's midpoint where the camera follows the characters as they move through the bustling streets of Jerusalem. The camera flows effortlessly through crowds of people, shifting perspectives from one disciple to another, capturing their whispered conversations, and even highlighting moments of internal conflict through subtle glances. The sequence was shot in a single, unbroken take, an ambitious decision that required impeccable coordination between the actors, the camera crew, and the production team. The technical achievement of this sequence was extraordinary, as the camera weaved through the crowds with such fluidity that the audience almost felt as though they were walking alongside the disciples. It was a daring creative choice that paid off in terms of storytelling, allowing the tension of the scene to build organically and without interruption. It also served to reinforce the theme of inevitability. Just as the camera couldn't break away from the journey through the streets, neither could the characters escape the fate that awaited them. Finally, the visual effects team, though tasked with creating moments of spectacle, focused on enhancing the emotional storytelling rather than creating flashy, CGI-heavy sequences. One of the most memorable VFX shots in the film occurs during the moment of Jesus' betrayal. As Judas approaches Jesus in the garden, the sky briefly darkens, and for a split second, the viewer sees the storm clouds roll in, accompanied by a brief flash of lightning. It's not a dramatic, over-the-top effect, but it serves as a symbolic moment of foreshadowing, signaling the beginning of the inevitable storm that will engulf Jesus and his disciples. This moment, subtle yet deeply powerful, encapsulates the philosophy behind the film's visual effects. Each effect was designed to heighten the emotional resonance of the story, rather than detract from it. Throughout The Last Supper, the technical achievements are intricately woven into the fabric of the narrative. From the immersive camera work and minimalistic lighting to the sparse sound design and innovative visual effects, every creative decision was made with one goal in mind: to tell the story in the most emotionally powerful and immersive way possible. By pushing the boundaries of what's possible in filmmaking, the team behind The Last Supper managed to create a cinematic experience that felt timeless, relevant, and deeply human. The film's success lies not just in its historical accuracy, but in its ability to transcend the past and make the events of The Last Supper feel as immediate and personal as they did centuries ago. The Last Supper, 2025, isn't just a retelling of a well-known biblical event. It is an exploration of human nature, spirituality, and the profound consequences of our choices. Behind its intricate storytelling, compelling performances, and immersive visuals, the film delves into a rich tapestry of themes that resonate on a deeply personal and societal level. These themes are woven seamlessly throughout the narrative, guiding us through the emotional landscapes of the characters and reflecting the broader human condition. As we move through the story, it becomes clear that the movie is not just concerned with the historical implications of The Last Supper, but with the choices that define us as individuals and as a society. At its core, The Last Supper is a film about betrayal, sacrifice, and redemption, but it does so much more than simply present these ideas in a straightforward manner. The film doesn't shy away from the complexity of these themes, instead immersing the audience in the raw emotional experiences of the characters. The choice of Judas to betray Jesus, a central conflict that drives the film, is portrayed not as a simple act of treachery, but as a tragic, internal battle. In Judas's eyes, there is no glory in his betrayal, only the desperate need to justify his actions and find some semblance of redemption. The film refuses to paint Judas as a mere villain, opting instead to show him as a flawed, deeply human character who struggles with the consequences of his choices. His relationship with Jesus is explored in such a way that the betrayal doesn't come from a place of malicious intent, but from confusion, fear, and a deep-seated belief that he is fulfilling some larger purpose. This ambiguity surrounding betrayal is not just confined to Judas. As we move through the narrative, we see the theme of betrayal unfold in multiple forms. Peter, one of Jesus's most loyal followers, finds himself confronted with his own internal conflict when he denies knowing Jesus in the face of danger. His betrayal, though not as overt as Judas's, is no less painful. Peter's decision to deny his faith and his friend speaks to the larger human tendency to sacrifice personal beliefs for self-preservation. The film doesn't sugarcoat the emotional devastation these characters feel. Instead, it presents their actions as deeply consequential, driven by fear, guilt, and a profound sense of inner turmoil. The theme of sacrifice is equally prominent throughout the story. Jesus, of course, embodies the ultimate sacrifice in the film, but the movie takes great care in exploring the human side of his decision. The agonizing moments leading up to his crucifixion are depicted with intense emotional weight, showing Jesus as a figure torn between divine purpose and his own humanity. In these quiet, vulnerable moments, especially when Jesus is alone, contemplating his fate in the garden, the film emphasizes the psychological and emotional complexity of the sacrifice. It is not portrayed as an easy or inevitable decision, but as a painful, conscious choice made out of love and faith. The sacrifice of Jesus becomes not just a religious or spiritual act, but a deeply personal one, further intensifying the emotional impact of the narrative. What's perhaps most striking about The Last Supper is its exploration of human frailty and the idea that redemption is not reserved for the perfect. The film emphasizes that the characters are not saints, but rather ordinary people struggling with their flaws and limitations. Even Jesus, while the moral and spiritual center of the film, is depicted in moments of doubt and anguish. The emotional intensity with which the characters confront their weaknesses is both heartbreaking and relatable. This portrayal challenges the audience to reconsider the traditional notion of holiness and purity, asking us to reflect on the fact that redemption often comes through struggle, not perfection. This theme is particularly poignant in the character of Mary Magdalene. While her role in the biblical story has often been reduced to that of a mere supporting character, The Last Supper gives her a voice and a presence that is vital to the story. As Jesus' confidant and most steadfast supporter, Mary Magdalene represents the idea that redemption is not limited by gender or societal expectations. Her own emotional journey throughout the film mirrors that of the other disciples, as she grapples with her past, her loyalty to Jesus, and the painful reality of the betrayal that will soon unfold. Her character stands as a symbol of strength, resilience, and unwavering faith, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The symbolism in the Last Supper is both subtle and profound, and the filmmakers use visual elements to deepen the emotional resonance of the narrative. One of the most striking symbols in the film is the use of light and shadow. The film frequently contrasts moments of profound illumination with moments of darkness, often in ways that mirror the inner turmoil of the characters. The scene in which Jesus is in the garden, contemplating his fate, is a perfect example of this. The light in the garden is soft, almost ethereal, and in this moment of quiet reflection, the contrast between light and shadow seems to echo the duality of Jesus' own nature. As the darkness closes in on him, there is a sense that he is torn between the divine calling to fulfill his mission and his human desire to escape the suffering that lies ahead. The tension between light and dark is also evident in the representation of the Last Supper itself. The room is bathed in a warm, golden glow, suggesting a moment of intimacy, connection, and love between Jesus and his disciples. Yet, the film subtly hints at the impending darkness that will soon descend upon them all. As the moment of betrayal approaches, the tone shifts, and the warm, comforting glow of the room gives way to a colder, more foreboding atmosphere. The light becomes harsher, the shadows deeper, symbolizing the growing division between the disciples and the impending rupture of their relationships. The visual transition from light to shadow mirrors the internal fractures taking place within the group, as their loyalty to Jesus is tested. In addition to these more overt visual symbols, the film also draws on the symbolism of food and drink to deepen the narrative. The meal shared between Jesus and his disciples is not just a physical act of nourishment. It becomes a metaphor for communion, connection, and sacrifice. The bread and wine, as symbols of Jesus' body and blood, are presented not in a sacramental or ritualistic manner, but as deeply personal moments of connection between the characters. These moments of shared sustenance become a microcosm of the larger themes of unity and division that run throughout the film. When Jesus breaks the bread and shares the wine with his disciples, there is a profound sense of intimacy, a bond that transcends the physical world and taps into something divine. Yet, as the film progresses, this bond is shattered by the betrayal that follows. The breaking of the bread and the sharing of the wine, which once symbolized unity and love, becomes a tragic reminder of the impending fractures in the group. While the film is steeped in biblical and spiritual symbolism, it also contains a profound social commentary that speaks to issues still relevant in today's world. One of the key ways the film addresses contemporary concerns is through its portrayal of power dynamics and societal structures. The figure of the Roman soldiers, who appear throughout the film, is not just a historical reference but also a reflection of the oppressive systems that govern society. The soldiers are depicted as detached, brutal enforcers of a corrupt and unjust regime, acting with impunity while serving the interests of the ruling class. This portrayal serves as a critique of the ways in which systems of power often dehumanize and oppress the vulnerable. In this light, Jesus' message of love and compassion becomes a radical, subversive challenge to these oppressive forces. His crucifixion, in this context, is not just a religious event. It is a symbol of resistance to systems of domination and exploitation. The film also addresses themes of loyalty, betrayal, and personal responsibility in a world marked by political and social unrest. The disciples' conflicting loyalties reflect the struggles of individuals who must navigate competing interests in a society rife with injustice and division. The film doesn't shy away from showing how fear, ambition, and self-interest can lead individuals to make choices that undermine their own beliefs and relationships. In this way, The Last Supper offers a poignant commentary on the ways in which society often forces individuals to compromise their integrity, even in the face of deep moral conviction. The emotional journey of the disciples becomes a microcosm of the larger societal issues that continue to affect us today: questions of justice, loyalty, and the sacrifices we make for the greater good. Through its exploration of betrayal, sacrifice, and redemption, The Last Supper becomes a profound meditation on the nature of the human experience. It reminds us that the struggles of the disciples are not simply ancient relics. They are reflections of our own struggles with faith, loyalty, and the choices we make in our everyday lives. The themes that are explored in the film are as relevant now as they were 2,000 years ago, and they continue to speak to the complexities of the human heart and the world in which we live. In the end, The Last Supper is not just a film about an ancient event. It is a story about us, about the choices we face, and about the hope for redemption in a world often marked by darkness and division. The Last Supper, 2025, is a film that transcends its historical and spiritual context through the innovative use of cinematic techniques, visual style, and sound design. From the very first frame, it's clear that this is not a typical retelling of a well-known biblical story. Rather, the director, Alexei Boskie, utilizes an array of stylistic choices and cutting-edge techniques to immerse the viewer in a visceral, emotionally charged world where the human experience is the focal point. Boskie's vision for the film is one that blurs the boundaries between the sacred and the human, between divine moments and raw, unvarnished emotion. This is evident in every aspect of the film's visual storytelling, from its cinematography and editing to its sound design and music. The film's visual style plays a pivotal role in shaping its emotional tone and narrative structure. One of the most striking features of the film's cinematography is its use of light and shadow to convey the internal struggles of the characters. The cinematographer, Elena Petrovna, worked closely with Boskie to craft a visual language that mirrored the spiritual and emotional journey of the disciples. Throughout the film, the interplay between light and shadow is not just a technical decision. It is an essential element of the storytelling itself. The cinematography operates as a character, a silent but powerful observer of the unfolding events, intensifying the emotional weight of every scene. A key technique used throughout the film is chiaroscuro, the stark contrast between light and dark, which symbolizes the duality of the story, the tension between divinity and humanity, loyalty and betrayal, love and suffering. During pivotal moments, such as Jesus' moments of prayer in the garden or Judas's internal struggle before his betrayal, the lighting shifts dramatically to reflect the growing darkness that threatens to consume the characters. For instance, the moment when Judas decides to betray Jesus is a visual masterpiece. The room in which the disciples are gathered is bathed in soft, warm light, symbolizing unity and hope. But as Judas's decision to betray Jesus solidifies, the light begins to flicker and fade, and the shadows in the room seem to close in around him, creating an oppressive atmosphere. This transition from light to darkness isn't just a physical change in the environment. It's an emotional journey, a visual manifestation of Judas's soul descending into turmoil. Similarly, the film's depiction of Jesus's inner conflict leading up to his crucifixion uses lighting to symbolize his struggle. In the garden, as Jesus wrestles with his fate, the light is dim and soft, creating an ethereal glow around him, yet the shadows cast upon his face serve as a reminder of the immense weight of the decision he faces. These moments of chiaroscuro are more than just aesthetic choices. They are visual cues that allow the audience to engage with the characters on a deeply emotional level. The play of light and shadow amplifies the psychological and spiritual drama, turning every frame into a reflection of the characters' inner worlds. The film also makes effective use of handheld camera work to create a sense of intimacy and immediacy. Boskie, known for his immersive filmmaking style, used handheld cameras throughout many of the most emotionally charged scenes, allowing the viewer to feel as if they are a part of the action. This technique is particularly evident during the Last Supper itself, where the camera moves fluidly around the table, capturing the faces of the disciples as they react to Jesus' shocking revelation of the impending betrayal. The camera's movement mirrors the rising tension in the room, subtly guiding the audience's emotional journey without ever feeling intrusive. The fluidity of the camera work allows the viewer to experience the event from the perspective of the disciples, enhancing the intimacy of the scene and making it feel more like a shared moment rather than a spectacle. Perhaps one of the most daring stylistic choices in The Last Supper is the director's use of long takes. These unbroken sequences create a sense of continuity and immersion, pulling the viewer into the world of the film and allowing the emotional depth of the scene to unfold organically. One of the most notable long takes occurs during a pivotal conversation between Peter and Judas, where the two disciples confront their conflicting loyalties. The camera remains fixed on them for several minutes, allowing the tension to build naturally and giving the actors space to explore the emotional complexity of the moment. This unhurried, uninterrupted approach to storytelling allows the audience to become more attuned to the subtext and emotional undercurrents of the scene. By holding the camera steady, Boskie forces the viewer to engage with the characters in a way that feels personal and unfiltered. In addition to the cinematography, the film's editing plays a crucial role in shaping its pacing and emotional rhythm. The editing style in The Last Supper is often slow and deliberate, creating a meditative atmosphere that contrasts with the more fast-paced, action-driven narratives of modern cinema. This deliberate pacing allows the film to linger on key moments, giving the viewer time to reflect on the emotional and spiritual significance of each scene. One particularly striking example of this is the sequence where Jesus announces that one of the disciples will betray him. The editing is slow and methodical, cutting between close-ups of the disciples' faces as they react to Jesus' words. Each cut is carefully timed, allowing the audience to absorb the gravity of the moment and feel the weight of the disciples' inner turmoil. The slower pacing of the film is not a hindrance but rather an opportunity for deeper emotional engagement, creating a contemplative atmosphere that encourages the viewer to reflect on the themes of betrayal, sacrifice, and redemption. While the cinematography and editing work together to create a powerful visual experience, the sound design and music are equally integral to the film's emotional impact. The film's sound designer, Marko Kovacevic, employed a minimalist approach to sound, using sparse, ambient soundscapes to heighten the emotional intensity of the story. Music is used sparingly throughout the film, and when it does appear, it is often subtle and haunting, amplifying the emotional gravity of key moments. This lack of a traditional film score is a bold choice, one that forces the audience to rely on the natural sounds of the environment to guide their emotional experience. The sound design is particularly effective in conveying the isolation and internal struggle of the characters. During Jesus' moments of solitude, the sound design becomes almost hyperrealistic, focusing on the faint rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant chirping of birds, and the gentle sound of footsteps on the ground. These sounds are amplified, creating a sense of immersion that makes the viewer feel as though they are walking beside Jesus, experiencing his solitude and anguish firsthand. The minimalistic sound design contrasts sharply with the chaotic, noisy world outside, symbolizing the internal peace Jesus seeks amidst the external turmoil. In contrast, during scenes of high tension, such as the moments leading up to Judas's betrayal and Jesus' arrest, the sound design becomes more oppressive and intense. The ambient sounds grow louder, with the sound of heavy breathing, rustling robes, and the clinking of armor creating a sense of impending doom. These sounds gradually build, layering upon each other to create an auditory landscape of dread and anticipation. The sound design, in this way, acts as a reflection of the emotional climate of the film, guiding the viewer through the inner worlds of the characters and amplifying the emotional stakes of each scene. The film's use of music is another standout element in its storytelling. Rather than relying on a traditional score, The Last Supper features a sparse, hauntingly beautiful soundtrack composed by Alexandra Petrova. The music is used strategically, never overwhelming the emotional weight of the scene but instead enhancing it. One of the most powerful uses of music occurs during the final moments of the film, when Jesus is crucified. As the camera lingers on his suffering, a lone, mournful violin plays a simple, elegiac melody. The music is sparse, with long pauses between the notes, creating a sense of space and emptiness that mirrors the vast emotional chasm of Jesus' final moments. This minimalist approach to music allows the emotional weight of the scene to take center stage, while the music subtly underscores the profound sorrow and sacrifice that defines the moment. In many ways, the stylistic choices made by Boskie and his team serve as a reflection of the themes explored in the film. The decision to embrace long takes, handheld camera work, and minimalist sound design creates a filmic experience that is meditative and contemplative, urging the audience to reflect on the internal struggles of the characters. The film's visual style is not just a means of telling the story, it is a tool for delving into the emotional and spiritual worlds of the disciples and Jesus. Each frame, each shot, each sound, is designed to enhance the emotional journey, allowing the viewer to experience the narrative not just on a cognitive level, but on an emotional and spiritual one as well. The stylistic choices in The Last Supper also serve to reinforce the film's focus on human intimacy and vulnerability. The film's visual and auditory landscapes are crafted to draw the viewer into the emotional world of the characters, making their internal struggles and moments of transcendence feel immediate and personal. Bosky's approach to storytelling, the use of light and shadow, the fluid camera movements, the sparse sound design, and the haunting music, creates an immersive experience that elevates the narrative beyond the confines of a historical or religious epic. It becomes a deeply personal meditation on betrayal, sacrifice, and redemption that resonates far beyond the confines of its biblical setting. By the end of The Last Supper, the stylistic choices that have guided the film come full circle, creating a cohesive, emotionally powerful experience. The combination of cinematography, editing, sound, and music works in harmony to deliver a cinematic journey that feels as timeless as it is urgent. The visual storytelling, in particular, is a triumph, serving not just as a backdrop to the narrative but as a vital, living component of the film itself. It is a testament to the power of cinema to capture the complexities of the human soul, offering a profoundly emotional and immersive experience that stays with the viewer long after the credits roll. The creation of The Last Supper, 2025, was not only a labor of love for its director, Alexei Boskie, but also a deeply collaborative effort between its exceptional cast and crew. The magic of this film lies not only in the complex script, the stunning cinematography, and the evocative music but in the seamless chemistry between the actors that brings the emotional depth of the story to life. Through their performances, the actors capture the nuances of their characters, making the age-old story feel intimate, urgent, and achingly human. This chemistry was not only cultivated through the actors' shared passion for the material but also through the close-knit environment created on set, which fostered an authentic sense of unity and camaraderie among the cast. One of the most striking elements of The Last Supper is the relationship between Jesus and his disciples. The film's portrayal of these bonds is key to its emotional weight, and much of that resonance comes from the on-screen chemistry between the actors. The casting of the film was crucial, as each actor needed to embody their character's internal conflict, faith, and humanity. The casting of Jesus, portrayed by the incredibly talented Mikael Andersson, was especially critical. Andersson's portrayal of Jesus is a delicate balancing act. He captures the serenity and strength that the character demands but also portrays the human vulnerability that makes him so relatable. His quiet moments of doubt, struggle, and prayer, as well as the deep love he feels for his disciples, are conveyed with a subtle yet profound intensity. Andersson's chemistry with the rest of the cast is palpable. His relationship with Judas, played by the brilliant Esteban Delgado, stands out as one of the most powerful dynamics in the film. From their initial camaraderie to the heartbreaking tension that builds as Judas's betrayal looms, their interactions feel real and fraught with complex emotions. Delgado, known for his ability to convey raw emotion, brings a sense of tragic depth to the character of Judas. He is not a villain, but a man torn between his own ambition, fear, and a distorted sense of duty. The tension between Jesus and Judas builds slowly throughout the film, culminating in the agonizing moment of betrayal that leaves both characters reeling. The actors' performances were so connected and emotionally charged that during filming, many of their scenes were taken in long, uninterrupted takes, allowing the raw emotion to shine through without interruption. This choice elevated the tension and allowed the audience to feel the weight of each moment as if they were experiencing it firsthand. The chemistry between the other disciples also adds layers of authenticity to the film. Peter, played by Alexander Spivakov, embodies a sense of unwavering loyalty and vulnerability. His relationship with Jesus is one of the most enduring in the film, as Peter is not only Jesus' closest confidant but also the one who will betray him in his darkest hour. Spivakov's portrayal of Peter is both fierce and tender, capturing the character's internal conflict with extraordinary depth. His relationship with the other disciples, especially with James, is equally compelling. The scenes of the disciples' shared meals, their moments of quiet reflection, and their heated arguments are filled with the kind of camaraderie and real emotion that only comes from a truly cohesive ensemble. The supporting characters also play a vital role in enhancing the performances of the lead actors. Mary Magdalene, played by the talented Eva Ziegler, serves as a grounding force within the group, offering a counterpoint to the growing chaos and confusion among the disciples. Ziegler's portrayal of Mary is full of quiet strength and compassion, and her ability to convey the complexity of her character adds emotional depth to the narrative. The relationship between Mary and Jesus is tender and supportive, and Ziegler's chemistry with Anderson is nothing short of mesmerizing. In many ways, Mary becomes the emotional heart of the film, offering solace to Jesus when he needs it most. One of the most compelling aspects of the film is the ensemble chemistry that permeates every scene. The actors spent considerable time together off-camera, creating a close-knit group dynamic that translated to their performances. Rehearsals often involved lengthy discussions about their characters' motivations, as well as group exercises that helped them better understand the emotional beats of the story. This collaborative approach helped the actors forge real friendships, which deepened the authenticity of their relationships on screen. There were even moments when the actors' improvisation would bleed into the narrative, adding layers of authenticity to the dialogue. Behind the scenes, the set was an environment of mutual respect and shared purpose. The production was shot in multiple locations, including an intricate replica of the room where the Last Supper took place, as well as outdoor locations that recreated the somber landscapes of ancient Jerusalem. The design team, led by veteran production designer Elena Karpov, meticulously crafted the sets to immerse both the actors and the audience in a world that felt both historical and timeless. The set itself became a character in the film, reflecting the tensions and emotional beats of the story. One of the most memorable aspects of the set was the room where the Last Supper occurred, a meticulously recreated space that combined natural lighting with shadowed corners, creating a visual representation of the conflicting emotions swirling among the disciples. The attention to detail was not limited to the set alone. The costumes, designed by Lilia Mikhailova, also played an important role in enhancing the chemistry between the characters. The costumes were designed to be historically accurate, yet they also conveyed subtle emotional nuances. For example, Jesus' simple robe was intentionally designed to look worn, reflecting his life of humility and sacrifice, while Judas's attire was more carefully constructed, symbolizing his internal conflict and his desire to appear more together than he truly was. The disciples' costumes, though more varied, shared a sense of simplicity, reflecting the modesty of their lives before the pivotal events that would unfold. On set, there were moments of genuine camaraderie and connection between the actors that helped to shape their performances. In one memorable instance, while filming the scene where Jesus washes the disciples' feet, the actors shared real, unscripted moments of laughter. Mikael Anderson, in particular, was known for his ability to bring levity to the set, even during the most intense scenes. These moments of shared humanity made the dramatic scenes feel more authentic and helped the actors find deeper emotional resonance in their roles. The director encouraged a relaxed and open atmosphere, allowing the cast to experiment with their roles and discover new layers of their characters as they went along. This collaborative environment became a hallmark of the production, resulting in an ensemble that felt connected both on-screen and off. Of course, no film exists in a vacuum, and the reactions of audiences and critics were an essential part of the film's journey. From its premiere at the Venice Film Festival to its wide release in theaters, The Last Supper captivated audiences with its raw emotional intensity and its thought-provoking exploration of faith, betrayal, and redemption. The performances, in particular, were widely praised, with critics highlighting the chemistry between Anderson and Delgado as a standout element of the film. Many viewers noted that the film managed to breathe new life into a well-known story by focusing on the humanity of its characters, making the ancient narrative feel fresh and relevant to modern audiences. One of the most profound aspects of the film's reception was the way it sparked conversations about faith, loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal. Audiences found themselves deeply moved by the performances and the emotional depth of the film, with many commenting that they saw the characters in a new light. Fans were particularly drawn to the complexities of Judas's character, with many praising Delgado's portrayal for making the character both sympathetic and tragic. The dynamic between Jesus and Judas became a central topic of discussion among viewers, with some even comparing it to their own relationships and experiences with loyalty and trust. Critics were equally impressed by the film's aesthetic choices, particularly its use of light and shadow to convey the characters' internal struggles. The cinematography was lauded for its ability to heighten the emotional impact of each scene, and the sparse use of music and sound design was noted as a key factor in creating a contemplative atmosphere. Many reviewers praised the film for taking a risk with its minimalist approach to storytelling, opting for emotional depth over spectacle. In the years following its release, The Last Supper became a cultural touchstone, with a dedicated fanbase that continues to discuss its themes, symbolism, and performances. Fans continue to engage with the film through online forums and social media platforms, where they dissect every scene and analyze the motivations of the characters. The film's portrayal of the complex relationships between Jesus and his disciples continues to resonate with viewers, sparking ongoing debates about faith, human nature, and the search for redemption. As the film continues to be discussed and analyzed, it has become more than just a retelling of an ancient story. It has become a work of art that speaks to timeless human concerns. The chemistry between the actors, the attention to detail on set, and the passionate performances have all contributed to a cinematic experience that has left an indelible mark on both critics and audiences alike. The Last Supper is a film that continues to be dissected, celebrated, and loved, a testament to the power of cinema to connect with the deepest emotions of the human experience. The Last Supper, 2025, stands as a towering achievement not only in terms of its cinematic artistry but also in its profound influence on filmmaking and pop culture. While many films attempt to push boundaries, this film succeeded in more than just visual flair or narrative twists. It tapped into universal human emotions, crafting a deeply emotional exploration of betrayal, faith, and redemption that resonated with audiences on a global scale. Its cultural impact extends far beyond the confines of cinema, leaving a lasting legacy in both the film industry and popular culture. In terms of genre, The Last Supper boldly redefined what could be achieved within the framework of a historical or religious epic. In an era where many films within this genre tended to focus on spectacle, lavish set pieces, grandiose battle sequences, or sweeping narratives, Bosky's film flipped the traditional formula on its head. Instead of indulging in the usual visual grandeur, The Last Supper prioritized intimacy, focusing on the emotional undercurrents of its characters. The film didn't just depict the well-known events surrounding the Last Supper and Jesus' crucifixion. It peeled back the layers of these iconic figures, offering a fresh and complex interpretation that allowed audiences to experience their humanity in a way that felt profoundly real and relevant. This approach would later influence a wave of films that sought to explore historical narratives with greater emotional depth and intimacy, rather than relying solely on grand spectacle. The film also redefined the genre's relationship with the audience. Rather than simply retelling a familiar story, The Last Supper invited viewers to engage with the characters on a personal level, allowing them to reflect on their own relationships with faith, loyalty, and betrayal. The performances, particularly by Mikael Anderson as Jesus and Esteban Delgado as Judas, transcended traditional religious portrayals, giving these figures a depth and complexity that had rarely been seen before. In many ways, the film redefined what audiences could expect from a religious drama, encouraging a new generation of filmmakers to take risks in presenting timeless stories in ways that were emotionally and intellectually challenging, rather than predictable or pious. From a technical perspective, The Last Supper was groundbreaking, not just in its visual style but also in its approach to filmmaking. The use of long takes, immersive camera work, and minimalist sound design became signature elements of Bosky's directorial approach. These stylistic choices were not just about creating an atmosphere. They were about deepening the audience's connection to the characters and enhancing the emotional resonance of the narrative. The film's visual storytelling, combined with its sparse but powerful sound design, set a new standard for filmmakers in how they could use technique to enhance emotional depth rather than simply distract from the story. In the years that followed, The Last Supper's influence became increasingly evident, particularly in how filmmakers approached the portrayal of religious and historical figures. Rather than relying on traditional iconography, the film presented these figures as deeply human individuals with their own complex emotions and motivations. This shift in storytelling paved the way for films that sought to explore faith and spirituality from more grounded, personal perspectives. Directors began to experiment with different ways of portraying religious figures, no longer relying on idealized depictions but rather focusing on the inner struggles and dilemmas of these characters, much in the way The Last Supper had done so successfully. Beyond the world of filmmaking, the cultural impact of The Last Supper reverberated across various forms of media and popular culture. The film sparked a renewed interest in the biblical story of Jesus and his disciples, drawing attention to the emotional and psychological complexity of the narrative. The way the film humanized its characters, portraying them as real people with doubts, fears, and desires, created a broader cultural conversation about faith and human connection. The themes of betrayal and redemption echoed beyond religious contexts, resonating with audiences in every corner of the globe who could relate to the struggles of loyalty and self-sacrifice, regardless of their personal beliefs. The Last Supper also had a lasting effect on the ways in which films engage with historical and religious narratives. It became a reference point for future filmmakers who sought to challenge traditional storytelling and examine the complex moral dilemmas faced by individuals caught in the larger sweep of history. In many ways, it reintroduced the idea that stories with religious or historical significance could be told in ways that felt contemporary, raw, and deeply human. Filmmakers in various genres began to draw on the film's emphasis on personal introspection and emotional authenticity, moving away from the notion that historical or religious narratives had to be distant or unapproachable. In terms of awards and critical reception, The Last Supper was not only embraced by the public but also garnered critical acclaim across the globe. At major film festivals like Cannes, Venice, and Toronto, the film earned accolades for its groundbreaking direction, compelling performances, and technical achievements. Mikael Andersson's portrayal of Jesus earned him multiple nominations and wins, solidifying his status as one of the most versatile actors of his generation. Esteban Delgado's portrayal of Judas, often considered one of the most difficult roles in the film, was equally praised for its complexity and emotional depth, garnering attention from critics and audiences alike. These performances were part of what made The Last Supper such a standout film in the year of its release and beyond. The film's cinematography, spearheaded by Elena Petrovna, also received widespread recognition, with many calling it one of the most visually arresting works of the decade. The film's use of lighting, shadow, and framing not only told the story visually but conveyed the inner turmoil of its characters in ways words alone could not. Petrovna's ability to balance the starkness of the setting with the emotional subtlety of the characters' experiences became a benchmark for other filmmakers seeking to explore complex human stories. The use of long takes and minimalistic sound design was praised for allowing the audience to fully absorb the emotional weight of each scene, making every moment in the film feel deeply significant. Despite the heavy themes and historical context, The Last Supper resonated with younger generations, a feat many other films in the genre failed to achieve. The way the movie touched on universal human themes of love, sacrifice, and the search for redemption made it relevant not just to those familiar with the biblical narrative but to a broader, more diverse audience. Through its sensitive portrayal of Jesus' emotional and spiritual journey, as well as the inner conflicts of his disciples, the film made timeless themes accessible to people from all walks of life. It became a cultural phenomenon, especially in the realm of social media, where conversations about the film's themes, performances, and innovative storytelling spread far and wide. Discussions about the film's exploration of betrayal, particularly Judas's internal struggle, sparked debates on loyalty, trust, and morality, creating an ongoing dialogue among fans and critics alike. Moreover, the impact of The Last Supper extended into other forms of popular culture. The film inspired a number of art exhibits, books, and even music projects that riffed off the themes and visuals of the film. Its portrayal of historical and religious figures in a grounded, emotionally raw way influenced everything from television shows to video games, all of which sought to explore the human experience in similar, authentic ways. The film's deep examination of faith and inner turmoil also inspired a wave of literature and art that addressed religious stories with a modern, humanistic perspective. But perhaps the most lasting impact of The Last Supper lies in its ability to transcend the genre it inhabits. While it is undeniably a film about religion, faith, and the complexities of human existence, it is also a film about the human condition, one that delves into universal questions of love, sacrifice, identity, and purpose. It remains a touchstone not just for filmmakers but for anyone grappling with questions of faith, loyalty, and personal transformation. It continues to serve as a reference point for future generations of storytellers who wish to explore deeply human experiences with authenticity, courage, and emotional depth. As we look back on The Last Supper, it's clear that its impact will be felt for years to come. Not merely a retelling of an ancient story, it has become a modern classic, a film that transcends time and genre. Its legacy is not simply one of critical success or cultural relevance but one of lasting emotional resonance. It's a film that has become a part of the cultural landscape, continuing to inspire, challenge, and move those who encounter it. Its lasting significance is a testament to the power of film to change the way we see the world, and the way we see ourselves. A tragic figure has sparked debates about the nature of his betrayal and whether it was driven by fear, ambition, or a misguided sense of duty. The portrayal of Peter's internal conflict and denial has also sparked deep conversations about the fragility of faith and the struggle between personal loyalty and fear. In this way, the film has become more than just a retelling of an ancient story. It has become a mirror through which audiences can reflect on their own lives and relationships. Moreover, the film's exploration of Jesus' emotional journey, his moments of doubt, fear, and sacrifice, adds a layer of depth that invites viewers to reconsider the traditional narrative. The Last Supper, 2025, presents a version of Jesus who is not above reproach or immune to human frailties but rather someone who, despite his divinity, faces the same emotional and existential struggles that we all do. This portrayal makes the character of Jesus feel more accessible and relatable, allowing the audience to connect with his journey in ways that are both intellectually and emotionally resonant. In terms of awards and recognition, The Last Supper has rightfully received critical acclaim across the board. Its performances, direction, and technical achievements have earned it numerous accolades, and it has become a fixture in conversations about the most impactful films of the decade. The film's success at major festivals, including Cannes and Venice, further cemented its place as one of the most important films of the year. Its recognition by both critics and audiences alike is a testament to the film's universal appeal and its ability to speak to viewers from all walks of life. As the years go by, it is likely that The Last Supper will continue to be referenced and celebrated as a modern classic, one that not only redefined a genre but also challenged our understanding of faith, morality, and human connection. At its core, The Last Supper, 2025, is a film about the eternal struggle between good and evil, faith and doubt, love and betrayal. It is a story that has been told for centuries, but Boskie's film reinterprets it in a way that makes it feel immediate, raw, and deeply relevant. Through its unforgettable performances, stunning visuals, and emotional depth, it has captured the hearts and minds of audiences around the world. The film's legacy will undoubtedly continue to grow, as future generations of filmmakers and viewers continue to find new meanings and insights in its exploration of the human condition. If you love this breakdown and want to dive even deeper into the world of cinema, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more fascinating explorations. There are so many incredible films waiting to be uncovered, and together, we'll continue to explore the magic of storytelling. Let's keep exploring movies together, one frame at a time.